collapse, perhaps, is already upon us. We keep hearing that it's right around the corner, that it could happen next week or next month or tomorrow, and we're just a little confused. But I think many of the aspects of collapse are here already, and for many people, they are very, very real and they exist every day. And while the dollar right now is surviving somewhat, that survival appears precarious given our $18 trillion debt and the fact that 1/3 of the American population is below, at, near, below the poverty level. 1/3, about 100 million. The aspects I'm going to look at today, 4 of them are things that you probably have been hearing about already, and I won't elaborate too much on any of these, but the last one is one that I've never seen and mentioned in anyone else's feelings about or any of the publications about collapse. But anyway, the first one is longevity. And we're number 42, according to the source that I looked at. Number 42, in spite of our being a superpower, wealthy, leader, world leader for many, many decades. And we just can't, it's hard to believe that we are now number 42 behind countries that we used to consider very close to third world nations just a few years ago. And anyway, we have the medicine, the facilities to be, we should be living so much longer. And what we have to ask is there some sort of design? Is this by design, or is it indeed natural that maybe Americans are just naturally unhealthy compared to the rest of the world? I don't think that. I think that somehow things are deliberately fashioned. Things don't just happen. Even though you've seen the bumper stickers, things happen. No, they don't. They are orchestrated usually. They are to someone's advantage. And why would a short longevity be to anyone's advantage? I don't know, but I look at the skies above and I see the dozens some days of what they call chemtrails. And I wonder, could this really be something that's trying to take many years off most of our lives? And then I go to the internet and do a search on the ingredients of the chemtrails, and too many, far, far too many, are saying the same ingredients: barium, strontium, arsenic, and a witch's brew of items, including aluminum particles. And we know what aluminum does, don't we, when ingested? But I just ask once again, is this deliberate, that years are being taken off Americans' lives? Number 2, I keep hearing about this, and I know you've heard about it, probably the same figures that I'm going to give you now concerning incarceration. I see this as a very important social item, especially since millions of our citizens are in jail, or and other millions are out on parole, or had their lives ruined by something in the system like that. And it's sad, once again, that a country of our prowess is unable to do better than a very atrocious number one. Is this an industry that is being fomented for employment purposes? Are we really trying to help people in this nation, or are we trying to get rid of them either by spraying them with chemicals or hastening them to a cell? And I remember many, many years ago, decades ago, a young fellow stopped in the town I was visiting, and he had a layover at the bus station. And because he had long hair and strange clothes, I guess, they did a search of him. And on his person, they found a fraction of an ounce of marijuana. And I didn't think anything about it. I thought, that's good that he didn't have more than that. But a few weeks later, I saw another paper. I was still there and saw that he had just received 25 years in jail for a fraction of an ounce of marijuana. It defied my imagination at the time, and to this day it still does, that we can have a legal system, a judicial system, that can do something like this. I like to think of that as just a bizarre, very bizarre item, but it's happening all too frequently. And writer David Montgomery has a site called Bananas, and he writes for many other sites, I think. Has a long, seemed like 80 or 90 pages, article about that was entitled "You Are a Criminal in a Mass Surveillance Society." We are all criminals in a mass surveillance society. And he goes on to tell why that there are thousands of new laws every year, and that we don't know the tens of thousands of old laws, much less the new ones. Imagine an 18-year-old kid out trying to make it on his own, trying to, if they want to get him, there are thousands of things they can get him for. And it's a horrible situation, and I think it's being used to the worst advantage possible these days. And as far as that kind of thing happening again in our society, the 25-year sentence for a fraction of an ounce of marijuana, that you want to think that's all over and done with, that that could never happen in this town or this city. It happens regularly, according to David Montgomery, that kind of thing. And all we have to do is think back a couple years when a very brave, courageous young person got 35 years for telling the truth about gross inhumanity. For telling the truth, 35 years. And in my opinion, this person deserves to be remembered along with people like Patrick Henry, Nathan Hale, as really, really true freedom fighters in America. But anyway, on to number 3, which is our trust and confidence in Congress and our American institutions. This is an attitudinal survey done by Gallup, and usually attitudinal surveys I look at and dismiss, but this one showed that virtually every institution in America that the citizens have practically very, very little confidence in their American institutions like the judicial system I was just talking about, the legal system, the news media, just right on down the elected leaders in particular. The uh, Congress received an 8% this year. 8% significant confidence. And I keep thinking, would anybody last, would a dentist last if his customers had an 8% confidence in his ability? How long can this go on? How long can this last? And last year it was 7%, two all-time lows, and it seems to be a direction that we're going in. And I mentioned the television news was the second lowest item, Congress being the first lowest, television news the second. What do we rely on for our information? I don't, but many people do. They rely on TV news. And yet they know it's not telling them the truth or what they need to know. No confidence in that news media. Something is amiss here. And one thing I just recalled is that we are number one in television sets for maybe 70 years running, number one in televisions. And if anything could be more telling about a national problem than that, I'm not sure what it could be, because it is a mind control instrument, and it might not be as fast and as effective as microwaves or chemicals, but it is definitely a mind control instrument, and they know it. A fourth item that comes to my mind is the military budget. I've seen words like burgeoning and words that can't define a budget as big as our own military budget, which is the greatest in the world by such a margin. It's hard to even imagine. To put it, you might have heard this before too, that there are the next 10 countries that are the leaders in military spending after us. All those 10 countries combined do not have a budget as great as ours. And, couldn't our tax dollars be spent on helping trim our debt, our national debt of $18 trillion? We hear about that debt almost daily, and yet we don't seem to be having any problem coming up with the largest budget by such a margin that we can't even imagine. And Dmitry Orlov, in his 5 Stages of Collapse book, says this is exactly one of the major reasons Russia collapsed, and he sees it happening right here in America. That this tremendous military budget is soaking up funds that should be going in other directions to help our infrastructure, to help keep people alive, and not for what they're doing with it. And finally, the one that you'll have trouble finding in many other analyses of collapse is the indicator that an indicator that we are number one in by all counts that I can see. I'm certain we are maybe greater in this than every nation in the world combined, and that is the a resurgence, a rebirth of COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, gang stalking, organized government police stalking, whatever of those names you want to call it. We are number one. It is a slow kill program. It is also a political assassination program, and it's a quote I use about it. It's the most atrocious criminal program to ever touch the earth, and that pretty much says it all. Its breadth is so great. It has unlimited resources, unlimited funding, it seems, and unlimited government assistance from every direction that I can see. And it's all over the internet, and yet I never heard it on any news program. I didn't know about it until 2 years ago. It's been going on. COINTELPRO was supposed to have ended in 19 outlawed by Congress, a very good Congress to do this. But what the experts say, the whistleblowers, it just went underground and became more and more powerful and more active, and now there are hundreds of thousands, probably millions of victims, because many people were like I was for the first 16, 17 years, having no idea. It was covert, very, very covert. They had good reason for keeping it covert. In my case, for that long, they collect information. They mind control. They do everything that we don't even think is possible. If somebody had told me about it 5 years ago, I would have been doubtful. I would have been skeptical that such a thing could exist in America, and if it did exist, I would think, well, this is maybe for a mere handful of people, that maybe they were problems for the government, something like that. Not true. Not true. The truth is that this is a very deadly, heinous program, that human beings are being experimented upon and tortured. And most any targeted individual, as we are called, can relate innumerable days, years, decades, if they've been targeted that long, of torture, terror, and worse, much worse. And I bring this up because, like I say, I just don't see this included in many of the analyses on collapse, and yet we see something that is involving the tactics of the KKK, going back that far. Well, even recently, I'm sure they've maybe used some of these tactics. KKK, the Nazi Stasi police programs, Stasi especially in Eastern Germany, and they didn't last very long. It collapsed, but this is a worldwide program, and I see that it's in Europe, probably not nearly as much as America, but it's getting roots in Europe as well. But anyway, the Nazi Stasi and the COINTELPRO elements, what they garnered from MK Ultra, all the years of chemical, horrible LSD experiments, what was garnered from that is now being utilized in this horrible COINTELPRO gang stalking continuation, is what I call it. And anyway, it's a sad item, and I hope that together all Americans can do something to end this absolute tragedy, a tragedy by all counts. And I thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back.